Hello everybody, I am the Book Elf 64 and I am going to talk about K-pop Demon Hunters today, but not just any K-pop Demon Hunters video essay. Okay, we are going to talk today about the character Jinu. Now if you don't know what K-pop Demon Hunters is, the story follows a famous K-pop girl group whose members live a double life. They are pop idols by day, performing, training, and dealing with being famous, and by night, they're demon hunters protecting humanity. Okay, like I just got that off Wikipedia, but you get it. And the names are Rumi, Zoe, and Mira, and these are our protagonists, and if you haven't seen K-pop Demon Hunters, go watch it on Netflix, okay? It's really, really awesome. But we're here to talk about the demons. Actually, specifically, we're going to talk about one demon boy that has a lot of fans called Jinu. You know, and as far as Rumi, Zoe, and Mira goes, the biggest challenge comes when a powerful demon threat arises, forcing them to confront their identities, the cost of fame, and just loyalty to each other as friends. And that's the movie in a nutshell, but we're not going to go deep into their journey because that's for a different video essay. We're going to talk about Jinu. He's the lead singer of the rival group, the Saja Boys, and Rumi's possible love interest. And Rumi being the main character with the purple hair, Jinu is both her possible love interest, and he is the lead singer of the demon boy band sent from basically hell to destroy the K-pop demon hunter girls and stop the Hong Moon from happening. And the Hong Moon is like this ritual that separates the demonic spiritual world from the real world, okay? And we'll get into that later too, okay? So anyways, and Jinu is the hidden antagonist of K-pop Demon Hunters and a morally gray character. He's a human who becomes a demon. He's initially out to take down the K-pop Demon Hunters and destroy their efforts to divide the human and demon worlds. Because the demons, led by Guima, want to devour and destroy humanity. In this video essay, we're going to talk about the possession of Jinu, okay? So what is possession, okay? Because a lot of people have theories about, is he possessed? Is he owned by Guima, who's essentially the South Korean devil? Like, what is he? Like, who is he? Okay, so possession is a rare preternatural phenomenon where a demon inhabits a person's body, not soul, and controls its organs and facilities, forcing them to act or speak against their will. So it just takes over their brain. It's like an alien that crawls into your ear and controls you and tells you what you're going to do. All right. And you've seen movies like The Exorcist. That's like the old classic movie of this kid who gets possessed by the devil and, you know, vomits. It's just terrible. He vomits. He spins around, he crawls around the ceiling. It's all really terrifying. The priest dies, and that's based on a really scary true story, but we're not going to get into that stuff. We're not going to do the scary real world stuff. We're here for Jinu, who's possessed by the devil. Okay, so he's not possessed by the devil. Okay, Jinu is owned by Guima, okay, who owns his soul and is forcing him to do his bidding, okay? And so, well, we're gonna talk about who Guima is in a little bit, but I'm gonna tell you why he's the devil, because essentially he's the big baddie. He's the guy who tells the demons what to do. Okay, you know. So here's where South Korean lore is different from our Western thought. You know, Western theology, Western thoughts. So in Korean tradition, demons exist on a spectrum. Some are dangerous, others are neutral, protective, or just mischievous. Most of the lore of K-pop Demon Hunters is based in Korean shamanism. And one might say, well, what does that have to do with Christianity? Christianity undoubtedly influences the film. And as a Catholic, it's hard to ignore some of the glaring similar concepts. However, just going to mention Christians in South Korea. So according to the Pew Research Center, and the numbers have gone up and down a little bit over time, but they're generally similar, okay? So in the 2015 National Census of South Korea, 56.1% of Koreans are not religious, and Protestantism, which is a common form of Christianity, is 19.7%. So almost 20% of South Koreans are Protestants of the total population, and then 8% are Catholics. So then that's like 20 plus 8. Okay, so it's 28% Christian aligned thought, which was way bigger than I thought. I did not know there were that many. And then I thought, well, there's probably way more Buddhist, right? Well, there's actually only, and this is according to the 2015 National Census in South Korea, 15.5% of the Korean population is Buddhist. So they're largely not religious as a people. And then there's a small percentage that practice like Korean shamanism and Korean traditionalism, like traditional Korean lore, traditional, like believing in myths, mythology, gods, trying to negotiate with demons. That's what their shamans do. Okay, well, not demons, but like evil spirits, because they don't see it as demons the way Christians or Catholics or just like Western thought has in general. And I say Western thought because even atheists and agnostics have some belief in, maybe don't have belief, but like, we have movies like, as I mentioned earlier, The Exorcist, haunted house movies, haunted houses, spooky, scary stories, Spooky Scary Sunday for all my Corey Kenshin fans. Okay. So, there's a lot of thought into all this stuff. All right. There's a lot of stuff on, so Christianity has had a huge influence on, how, like, the biggest example lately is that there's been a reinterpretation of traditional South Korean legends. So some Korean folklore stories have been revalidated through modern lens, sometimes merging with Christian notions of spiritual warfare and morality. Christianized narratives are frequently in modern K-culture productions as themes of good versus evil or divine judgment. And in this case of K-pop Demon Hunters, that is a thing, like good versus evil. You have the K-pop Demon Hunters, the good versus the evil demons. And you could say it's like the Huntrix group, and Huntrix is the name of the band in K-pop Demon Hunters, versus the Saja Boys, which is the demon boy band from hell. Okay. It's worth mentioning, and I'm gonna mention this. Christians, particularly Catholics, actually use Gregorian chant to defeat and drive out Satan and his demons. So there's like some similarities between there. And then now talking about Guima, Satan is the devil, right? In Catholic and Christian and biblical mythology, and we know him as Americans, like as an American figure. He's on our deviled eggs, even, like he's everywhere. Like you can see him. This isn't just for those who are religious or like, it's for those who are just like normal everyday Americans who may or may not believe in God. Satan is the same character as the demon king Guima, and here's what I have to say about that. So in Korean traditional mythology, there are good spirits and bad spirits, and the same is true in Christianity, in particular Catholicism. Our mythology has good spirits, like you have Saint Michael and his angels, and then we have our bad spirits, like Satan and his many legions of demons. So back to Guinyu, who's enslaved and possessed, or at least like owned by the devil, and we call him the enemy. Who are Catholics, we call him the enemy. I know other Christians do the same thing. But he's essentially a human enslaved to the devil, and he's cursed with schizophrenia. For him, he hears a voice that accuses him constantly of his sinful crimes. And in Christianity, that's called the voice of the accuser, which is the voice of a demon tormenting you and your family. And there are Christians, Catholics, other people who often will have guilt, like they do something wrong, and then suddenly they feel guilty all the time, and people say, well, that's the voice of the accuser. Say you stole a candy bar, and 5 years later, you grew up, you apologize maybe, 5 years later you feel guilty, and it's driving you crazy like an earbug, and that's the voice of the accuser. Brings up your past sins, the things you did wrong. Even if you're not Christian, you're gonna feel that way too. You're gonna be like, wow. You might feel guilt, and that's what we call the voice of the accuser. So Jinu turns to evil to overcome poverty, because in his time, there's a famine, everyone's super poor, and he's the provider, so we can assume that maybe his dad died. Maybe there was a war and he didn't have a dad, and it was just him, his mother, and his sister. And he is the male provider, because at that time, especially in South Korea and all over the world, frankly, women didn't have rights. So he had to provide for his family, and he would go out and play his, I don't know what it is. Okay, I forgot what the instrument is called. I'm just gonna call it a guitar. I'm sorry, guys. I'm sorry. Jinu would go out and play his instrument and sing to support his family, but there was no money. His whole family was going hungry and suffering, so Jinu is in charge of taking care of his mother and sister. So one day he hears this voice that tells him, hey, you give yourself to me, and I will give you what you want, right? And he eventually gets invited to the king's palace to sing for the king. He becomes like the king's musician, and he abandons his family. Jinu turns to evil to overcome poverty, and like the voice of the accuser, in this case, the voice of Guima, has a way of feeding you or people, and in this case, Jinu, idols, through temptation to sin and to do evil, and then turning around and telling you, oh, shame on you, you did something bad, 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 and then controlling you with your guilt. Okay? So that's like one of the things that like Jinu is actually controlled by his guilt and shame, by what he did. And Jinu chose fame and fortune and was cursed by the devil to succeed at the cost of his freedom. He essentially was the man of the house, and he abandoned his family, which likely left them to die. He's haunted by the evil he's done and the pain he's caused, and eventually Guima consumes him and turns him into a henchman, leaving him only with his beautiful voice. And like Rumi, he has patterns tattooed onto his skin with sin, shame, and guilt. Because like the demons bear these patterns that's like proof that they're demons. And it kind of in a way symbolizes like sin and evil. For Rumi, it's a little more complicated, and I want to get into that, but I realized I went down a rabbit hole that I'm not going to get out of, so we will talk about that in another video. Rumi, but so anyways, and all right, so now talking about Rumi. It's the light and goodness of Rumi and the purity of the Hongmoon that drives his demons and possession away. Spending time with Rumi, singing with her, reminds him that beneath the curse, he is a human being. Like, he is still human. Despite it being like, I don't know if it was 400 years, like enslaved to the devil, basically. And it's Rumi and her bandmates' voices that create the Hongmoon, an energy barrier made of their voice, their love for each other, and their love for their fans. The Hongmoon, and the Hongmoon in Kpopdemonhunters is not based on a real South Korean lore. The writers made it up for Kpopdemonhunters, but essentially, it is a barrier that drives the demon world from the human one. So Rumi is a light unto the world. She and her bandmates Mira and Zoe bring light like up on a hill, which is another Christian concept. Is like they're this light that their fans help ignite, and they're united through love because they love their fans. Like they live literally for their fans, and their fans live for them. And there's a lot of positivity, because they could easily be snobby or snuck up, but you can tell if they're humble. Like there's a part even at the end where they approach a group of girls that were like them and just little kids who are going crazy being Huntrix fans, and so like even though they're young too, like they have a genuine love for what they're doing, and they have genuine love and respect for each other as a family. So Rumi is this light into this world, and in the end, when the Demon King tries to kill Rumi, Jinu gives up his life and his own soul to spare. And this is another example of Christian ideas that have influenced other cultures, or in this case, South Korean culture, because Christianity is one of the few religions. Christianity is the only religion where God dies and gives himself up for humanity to wash them clean of their sin. All right, and in this case, Jinu gives himself up so Rumi can be free, because the Demon King tries to attack Rumi. She's not strong enough. She's like trying so hard despite the power of the Hongmoon that Jin throws himself in front of her and is killed. Probably taken to hell from what it, and this is South Korean lore, so it's not the same. But a verse came to my head, and it's good to die for a friend. And there's actually a Bible verse. I think it's in John. There's actually a Bible verse in the book of John that says that it's good to die for a friend. So Jinu is that friend who dies for Rumi. And I just think that's amazing. Like completely cool. So is Jinu possessed? Well, he's at least owned by Guima. Guima has total control of him. And he has control of all the demons and anyone with the patterns. Rumi is the one exception. And we have yet to understand, nor have the creators of Kpopdemonhunters explain why the devil cannot control Rumi. Because Rumi is supposedly half demon. And again, this is South Korean shamanism lore. It's not the same as Christian lore. And it was just something I noticed. So, I mean, I want to end this on a good note. I mean, greater love hath no friend than this, that a man laid down his life for his friends. And Junin is proof that you can have sin and darkness and the stain of the things that have happened to you in the past and still be a human being, still be full of, like, still have your humanity. And Jinyu's guilt does eat him alive. And, you know, we don't really see him, we see his regret. We don't really see something like repentance where he's like, wants forgiveness, you know, and wants to be made new. Like, we don't see that in the lore at all, because I mean, that's a complex thing, and we don't know what would have happened if he had lived. Like, I think maybe they would have covered something like that of him trying to atone for having abandoned his mother and sister and left them to die. Like, we don't know what happened to them. I don't know what that is in the lore. I really hope they make a sequel to this because the music slaps. There's so much to pick apart. You know, like, so there's just, I saw so many parallels between, you know, being a Catholic and being a, you know, even a writer. Like, as a writer, I saw so many interesting things to talk about that, you know, that went everywhere. So, I don't know. I wanted to talk about Jinu and his possession, you know, because Guima owns Jinu, and Jinu is, you know, owned by the devil, but it feels that even in his enslavement, he still has a speck of humanity, and Rumi ignites this love in him, and, you know, because he loves her, and they understand each other because she's like cursed, because it does indicate that Rumi is cursed, to have the demonic patterns, but the Hongmoon makes her pure again, and makes, I guess, essentially kind of rips the demonic part of her out, so she's no longer a demon. And, you know, he dies. And I hope there's more than that. Like, I hope we see more of this character, but I really, really enjoyed this character. I really enjoyed what he came to offer. And he is a gray antagonist, meaning, you know, he's not Guima. Guima is pure evil in essence, and most of the other yokai type creatures, I don't know what they're called specifically. Most of the other evil spirits, because I think yokai is Japanese, most of the evil spirits are just pure evil. Like, there's nothing redemptive, nothing human. You actually see that in the Saja boys. A lot of their behavior is just like there's a part where the fans are running up to the Saja boys and they're giving them flowers and candy and all kinds of stuff, and they're all, and the, you know, the demon boys are all smiling, but then you see them walking off the stage and they really don't care. They're actually slouched. They're gross. The only one who looks human is Jinu, because he is human. You know, essentially he's a human enslaved who has to be a demon. Like, he doesn't necessarily want to. He's not a willing participant. He just is a guy who made a stupid choice to sin. And then he was trapped in that sin for 400 years working as a slave for the devil, you know, and he had no freedom. He had nothing. He had nothing. And so, but Rumi offers him the speck of light, reminds him he's a human being, and to save her humanity and to save himself in a lot of ways, he gives up his life and he dies. And so I really just think that the character is worth noting. As a storyteller and as a writer, I found it interesting. Like, what would drive this character to, I don't know, atonement? I mean, after 400 years of, you know, taking souls for a living, why would he suddenly change his mind? Is I think because he saw light, and Rumi also gave him a chance. I mean, she's like kind of forgiveness when you think about it. Like, Rumi is forgiving. She doesn't really forgive, like, she doesn't hate him when she finds out the truth that, like, he abandoned his mother and sister. Like, she believes in him and still shows him kindness and forgiveness, and that goes long enough. Like, that goes a long way enough for that when the time comes, he gives himself up for her, and that's kind of beautiful. And, you know, I wish we could see more of his character. So, anyways, that's my 2 cents on K-pop Demon Hunters and my first video essay, because we're definitely doing more of this. There is no reason not to do more K-pop Demon Hunters. There is so much to talk about, and I'm going to. So, I really love Jinu. I mean, Sadra Boy's songs are actually pretty cool, but, you know, they are the bad guys. If you really break down Soda Pop, it is a little creepy because they're eating souls. And everyone's like, I'm gonna drink you like soda. Like they think it's pretty literal. They're literally going to drink us like soda. We are demon snacks, apparently, according to the Saja boys. So anyways, this is Book Elf 64 signing off. You guys are awesome. Thank you so much for watching. Bye bye.